And the Hawks have completed the investigations of Parliament's gutted buildings. Parliament is being briefed by engineers this hour on the preliminary assessment of the damage caused by the January fire. But there's still no figure what it will cost to repair Parliament. Now, Lindsay Dentlinger, my colleague, has been following the presentation, joining us this hour just to give us a quick update. Good afternoon, Lindsay. Thank you very much for your time this hour. So how severe do engineers say the damage to Parliament is?
Well, Dan, they've been assessing two key buildings, the National Assembly building, which is the one that has sustained the greatest damage from the second floor up onto the sixth floor. And then they've also looked at the old Assembly building, where there has also been, to a lesser extent, but still some significant fire damage. The major concern, obviously, Dan, is that both of these buildings are without roofs, and the concerns are to try to get rid of the debris, especially on the National Assembly building, that could just fly off. Today is again one of those very windy days in the city. There are real concerns about the debris that could fly off these roofs onto the parliamentary precinct and to the gardens behind. But we know that we've seen some photographs in this presentation this afternoon that the National Assembly has sustained significant damage from the second floor right up until the sixth floor. But what the engineers are saying is that despite this very severe damage, the building is not under threat of collapse in any way. They have demarcated the buildings into various zones, no-go zones, ones where people can access. But our very familiar National Assembly chamber that everybody is familiar with, that is completely gutted. The engineers explaining that if you looked up into the roof, if you've ever been in that building and seen the air conditioners and the lights high up above, it is all destroyed. And that very famous wooden panel section, the speaker's chair and the table in front of her, that is a red zone now because of all that wood, Dan. But the major concern, and what is really stalling further progress in making assessments, is all the water that is in the basement. The pumping of that water still continuing. Some of it is being pumped out at night into the city's sewage system, but until such time as they can get into the basement and pump up water that has reached heights of 1.7 meters, and I forget offhand how many thousands of liters of water that is right now. That is where the major focus lies right now, and what needs to happen is for all that water to be pumped out so that they can do a complete assessment of the entire building, because obviously right now they're not able to access those lower floors, those basement floors where all that water is pooled currently.
So what are the next steps now, Lindsay, in this process?
So these engineers have been working on what they now have termed phase one. We've got to remember that this is still a crime scene, and it is only as of today that the Hawks have now handed the building back to the Department of Public Works to continue with their assessments. And then their phase two, really, Dan, is to do further cost estimations. We do not know whether it is worth salvaging this building, worth restoring it, what it might cost. As you can expect, there are certain MPs again raising the issue of relocating Parliament rather than repairing what's left of these buildings. But all of this, engineers say it's premature to determine at this stage what it's all going to cost. They need to do further work, and right now their major concern is securing, as I said, the roofs, and also providing some type of temporary protection going into winter, so that you can protect the parts of the building that have not been grossly affected or destroyed from the winter inclement weather and all the further water that might flow into the building from rain and from other weather conditions. So the Public Works Minister is saying it's not going to be at least until early May that they might be able to put some form of price tag on the extent of this damage. But here's the Public Works Minister speaking to that committee earlier.
We are at an assessment stage, and the projected time for finalizing the second phase of the assessment, Kucha has indicated that that will be in early May. So we are not starting any restoration in early May. The second phase of the report that Kucha will do for us is one, they will then, in the second phase, do the estimate. They will assess the extent of the damage. Then they will also assess the cost of the damage.
Lindsay, finally, I mean, is the minister confident that that May period, the timeline May, is sufficient for the initial kind of estimate of the cost to enable that decision whether you renovate or you build somewhere else?
Well, let me answer the last part of your question first. The relocation of Parliament, you know that this is a debate that's been going on for years, but it's a far bigger debate, Dan. You know, Cape Town is prescribed in the Constitution as the seat of the legislature, so it goes far beyond what it would cost to repair Parliament and whether, on a financial ground it should maybe be rebuilt or restarted somewhere else. So that is a debate on its own, which the Speaker has in part addressed also, and so did Minister Patricia de Lille in this a meeting that was still ongoing when I came here to speak to you. But further to your second point, I think some of the delays, from what I understand, has been because this is primarily a crime scene, and so the Hawks had to be given the opportunity to carry out their investigations, and then also the engineers had to work on determining where it was safe, not only for themselves to move, but also for the Hawks and their K9 team to move around the building. And as I've mentioned earlier, the water in the basement has also been stalling. What I understand from them could have been a little bit further along if they weren't still saddled with that process of trying to pump out the water of the basement. The engineers did say, because we are coming up for several public holidays in this month of April, things will be a little further delayed, but they do seem to be fairly confident that by the first week of May, they will have some more answers to those financial questions, and also really the further structural integrity of the building, although they have pointed out that their preliminary assessments show that these buildings are not, despite some extensive damage on some of the floors, it is not under threat of collapsing in any way.
Thank you very much. Lindsay Dentlinger there, just updating us on the parliamentary hearing currently about the state of the parliament in terms of post the fire and the progress of investigations and what's going to happen next.